been able to join us this afternoon. But they have very busy schedules, so they do have to go. So once we get into the Q&A portion of the press conference, if you have questions for the doctors, please ask those first and early on. The mayor will have a message now for all county residents, and then we'll take reporters' questions. Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor.
Good afternoon, Patty. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Good afternoon, everybody. We continue to see a downturn in our COVID-19 infection rate and hospitalization, so that's really good news. We cannot get complacent, particularly now that Labor Day has passed and we know that spikes can happen after the holidays. So I want to encourage anyone who got together with friends or extended family this past weekend, need to consider to go get tested this week. I think it's just a good idea. So just please go do it. You don't have to have symptoms. We have more free testing sites than ever before, and most people are getting their testing results in 3 days or less. Go to miami-dade.gov/COVID-testing for a list of free testing sites throughout the county. You can make an appointment online, and at several locations, you can just show up. Now it's time to do this and avoid another spike. So I'm asking for the media to help spread the word on testing. Please stress that this is in your reports. It's important to keep the county's infection level low so that we can continue to open up our economy and get people back to their jobs. Now I want to update you on our next steps. Yesterday, Miami Mayor Francis Suarez and I had a conference call with the CDC doctors, including Drs. Fauci and Birx, and we discussed moving the county's curfew to 11 o'clock. The doctor suggested that we do it starting next Monday, which would be exactly 2 weeks since we allowed interior dining at restaurants with limited capacity at 50%. This morning, I also consulted with the county's medical experts, and they agreed that if we continued on this downward trajectory, that we should be able to extend the curfew to 11 o'clock on Monday and also allow some more outdoor activities under strict guidelines. Some of the doctors are joining us today and can answer your questions a little bit later. So here's what we're going to do. 10 p.m. curfew will remain in effect this week. We're making one exception starting tomorrow, only for those attending sporting events, college and professional games that end late. Tomorrow, the Miami Hurricanes play at Hard Rock Stadium with all the strict capacity limits. If you're going to the game, keep your ticket with you in case you get stopped by police when you're heading home. You will not receive a curfew violation as long as you have your game ticket. Also, starting next Monday, September 14th, we will allow more outdoor activities under strict guidelines. This includes opening up Zoo Miami and other outdoor spaces like Jungle Island. However, people must continue to wear masks and social distance. Most of the indoor spaces at the zoo, Jungle Island, and other types of amusements will remain closed. We don't want crowding in enclosed spaces, which spreads the infection. The playgrounds at these sites will also remain closed. Miami-Dade parks will be open until 10 o'clock for sports, and there will be lighting. Baseball and softball will be allowed under strict rules that include wearing a facial covering for the catcher. Rental bikes, scooters, and mopeds will be allowed to open for business, but those micro-mobility companies should have docking stations for the bikes to be returned, and they must supply sanitizing wipes so that users can clean the bike before and after their ride, and these companies will also disinfect the equipment daily. Tour boats and charter vessels will be allowed to operate at 50% capacity. So all these limited openings begin next Monday, not today, not this coming weekend. We want to do this carefully, and it's up to all of us to continue to follow the rules of wearing facial coverings and social distancing to tamp down the spread. We want to make sure that we continue to limit the spread of the virus before we move on to any other openings. So you can't let you down your guard. The county will continue to enforce all the new normal rules, and we will hit you with a $1 to $100 fine if you're not wearing a mask, and businesses can get fined up to $500 and risk getting shut down if they are not following the new normal rules. As of yesterday, we have issued citations to 612 businesses and 396 individuals since we started this civil enforcement strategy. Some 140 businesses have been closed until they make the fixes necessary to reopen. Finally, I want to mention that we continue to offer assistance for people and organizations impacted by COVID-19. The latest grant program will help not-for-profit groups. The Department of Public Housing and Community Development is working in partnership with the Miami Foundation to offer $10 million in federal grants to those organizations that have been impacted by the virus and would qualify for this one-time relief. The submission deadline for this application is September 30th. Go to the MiamiFoundation.org to apply. Now I'll say a few words in Spanish before taking your questions. Buenas tardes a todos. En Miami-Dade sigue bajando la tasa de infección de COVID-19. El número de personas en los hospitales también sigue bajando. Estas son excelentes noticias. Pero no podemos ser complacientes. Y más ahora que el Labor Day ha pasado, sabemos que después de días de festivos vemos un aumento en la tasa de infección. Por eso les ruego a cualquier persona que se haya reunido con amigos o familiares este fin de semana que vayan y se hagan la prueba. Es importante y fácil que lo hagan. Visiten miamidade.gov/coronavirus para una lista de los sitios gratis para hacerse el examen a través del condado. Así vamos a poder mantener los niveles de infección bajos y poder seguir abriendo nuestra economía. Queremos que las personas puedan volver a sus trabajos. Ahora les quiero hablar sobre los próximos pasos que vamos a tomar después de consultar con la CDC y nuestros expertos médicos. El toque de queda lo estaré extendiendo hasta las 11 de la noche, comenzando el lunes 14 de septiembre. También vamos a permitir más actividades al aire libre bajo restricciones estrictas. Así que presten atención a estos detalles. El toque de queda seguirá comenzando a las 10 de la noche por el resto de esta semana. Solo haremos una excepción, los eventos deportivos de college y profesionales que terminan tarde esta semana. Si tienen su boleto y la para la policía, no le darán la multa. Comenzando el lunes, abrimos más actividades al aire libre bajo ciertas restricciones, esto incluyendo abrir el zoológico Zoo Miami y otros espacios como Jungle Island. Eso sí, los visitantes tienen que usar máscaras como en todas partes y practicar la distancia social. Los patios de recreo o playgrounds van a estar cerrados todavía. Los parques del condado estarán abiertos hasta las 10 de la noche para deportes y se van a prender las luces. El béisbol y el softball serán permitidos bajo ciertas restricciones. La renta de bicicletas y motonetas será permitida, pero estas compañías que las rentas deben tener estaciones para devolverlas. Las estaciones deben tener pañitos para desinfectar los equipos después de cada uso. Las compañías también tendrán que limpiar estos equipos a diario. Los botes de tour y embarcaciones para rentar charter podrán operar a mitad de su capacidad. Todo esto comienza el lunes. Queremos hacerlo con cuidado para limitar nuevas infecciones antes de continuar con más aperturas. No bajen la guardia. Nuestro condado seguirá enforzando todas las reglas de seguridad. Si no tiene su máscara puesta en público, pagará una multa de $100. Los negocios pueden ser multados hasta $500. Si no están cumpliendo, corren el riesgo de tener que cerrar. Finalmente, quiero recordarles que vamos a ofrecer programas de ayuda para personas y organizaciones impactadas por el COVID-19. Ayer abrimos el programa de subsidio para las organizaciones sin fines de lucro. Este programa usa fondos federales para ayudar a los que la califican. El dinero lo pueden usar para pagar sueldos y otros gastos de introducción a causa del COVID-19. Tienen hasta el 30 de septiembre para aplicar y pueden entrar a miamifoundation.org para la información. Gracias y recuerden de seguir haciendo de su parte para salvar vidas. And Patty, those are my comments, and who's first?
Thank you very much. And now before reporters, go ahead and start raising your hands if you have questions for the mayor or for the doctors that are online. And I also want to mention that, as always, we have our Haitian Creole translator standing by, and once we're done with the Q&A portion, we will have the mayor's message in Haitian Creole. Okay, let us start out with Andy Slater with Fox Sports Radio. Andy.
Hey, Mayor, you had mentioned, I believe, yesterday or the day before about other places opening up too, such as movie theaters. Where are you with that now?
We're still discussing that. We had a discussion this morning with our medical advisors. They felt that it was better to hold off on that until we get a little bit more data, 2-week data on the opening of our restaurants and a little bit more data on post Labor Day before we start opening up those interior spaces. And so that is something that it's still under consideration, but it won't happen this Monday. It may happen a little bit later. We're also looking at other sports like football and soccer. Maybe there are some things that we can do to allow them to open up, but not yet. We've need a little bit more information. Also need some more data to come back on the opening of restaurants and, again, Labor Day.
And then real quickly, last one on the Canes game tomorrow night at Hard Rock Stadium. Is there going to be a certain time that people need to still be home by?
Well, I'm not sure we're going to put a time by it, but I would expect that if you're at somewhere at 3 o'clock in the morning, I don't think that the ticket's going to help you much, okay? So you need to get back home after the game. We know when the game ends. We'll give you a sufficient amount of time to get back home. There's really, restaurants and stuff are going to be closed anyway. We do have a curfew for the rest of the folks at 10 o'clock. I don't know what you're going to be doing out and about, but you need to get back home. But, if you're out past 10, which we think most of the fans that are going there are going to be out past 10, just have your ticket, your ticket, and you'll be fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Christina Vasquez from Local 10. You're up next. Hi, Christina.
Hi, good afternoon. So while we're having this conversation, as you know, there's a Miami-Dade County Public Schools school board meeting happening, and these conversations are in dialogue with each other, given that the management of community spread within the county is one of the variables by which a district decision to open at least a schoolhouse model hinges upon. So since Dr. Marty is here, and it's good to see you, I'm listening to the public comment kind of simultaneously, and, there's a lot of folks weighing in on when it would be safe. What are your thoughts about what you're seeing county-wide when it comes to those metrics we all know and love so well, the hospitalization rate, the percent positive rate, and how that relates to Miami-Dade County Public Schools' ongoing discussion of when it could be, quote, safe to reopen to the schoolhouse model?
Dr. Marty, you need to unmute there. There we go.
Very pleased to see that our numbers have come down so significantly. It is much better in our hospitals, and those are real numbers. So, of course, we have to be very, very careful. We don't yet know. It'll take 2 weeks before we know what happened over Labor Day. We're still very cautiously optimistic that the reopening of the restaurants has not led to any significant increase in the number of cases. Certainly, it's not demonstrated yet, but that's one of the reasons that we're waiting until Monday. And the reason I'm talking about these other things and not about schools is because everything compiles upon each other, right? So as the risk is going to increase if we have face-to-face schools, but is it going to increase? How much it increases depends on the viral load in our community. And so if we're doing everything possible to keep that viral load down, if we continue to have this rapid turnaround that we finally managed to have with testing, then if there is an unfortunate small cluster in the school, we can keep it small. We can keep it from becoming a horrific situation. In addition, the school board is well aware of all the measures that are absolutely necessary to reopen schools. The superintendent has been spectacular in his attention to detail and attention to the science. So I think he's going to be very careful about exactly watching what happens over the next couple of weeks before a definitive decision is made to open schools, and that would be appropriate.
Thank you, Dr. Marty. Christina was just texting me that she got knocked off. She's trying to reconnect, but thank you for your answer, and she'll grab it from our feed. Ana Cuervo, Telemundo, is up next.
Muchísimas gracias. Mi pregunta es tengo dos preguntas, una para cada doctora, si se la quieren repartir, para la doctora Martín y para la doctora Abo. Hay una multa, hay reglas sobre el uso de mascarillas en público, en las calles. Pero ¿cuál es su consejo, su petición a las reuniones en casa con personas de varias edades, con distintos condiciones de salud, cuando las personas quizás no quieren usar la mascarilla en un lugar privado? Y mi otra pregunta tiene que ver con por qué esperar 2 semanas, lo importante que es esperar 2 semanas después de Labor Day, por qué se espera. No sé si se la quieren repartir.
Eso tiene que ver como, vamos a hacer la respuesta a las dos preguntas y después que habla también doctor Abo, que ella es súper. Ahora, mira, número uno, el tiempo de esperar las 2 semanas es simplemente porque la historia natural de la infección demora cuando uno adquiere el virus hasta que se empieza a notar síntomas y entonces después de notar síntomas estar suficientemente para presentar en los hospitales. Y por eso uno espera para ver cuando de verdad empiezan a subir los casos. Más o menos ya nos damos cuenta que demora más o menos 2 semanas. Y la otra pregunta era sobre, ¿qué?
You're muted, Anna.
El uso de mascarilla en ambientes privados. Hay reglas, que hay consecuencias por no usarlas en público. Pero ¿qué tal reuniones en casa que pueden ir ocurriendo más cuando se ve que los números están mejorando?
Bueno, por supuesto, nosotros los datos no han demostrado muchas veces que la mayoría de los casos se adquieren en reuniones de familiares. O sea, precisamente eso es un lugar de bien alto riesgo y tiene que ver entre las razones que las personas vienen de diferentes casas, hacen diferentes actividades, se unen y como tienen este amor familiar, se olvidan que el riesgo existe y no practican lo que tiene que practicar, el uso de máscara, la distancia, pensando que como es un tío, una tía, un abuelo, etcétera, no puede ser riesgo y eso desafortunadamente no es la verdad. Sí, deben usar las mascarillas y deben hacer las reuniones afuera de la casa, en un patio o algo así, porque es mucho menos peligroso.
Gracias, doctora. La doctora Abu, si quiere agregar algo en español sobre de lo que se ha hablado.
Gracias, Ana. Estoy completamente de acuerdo con lo que dijo la doctora Marty. Es 100%. En primer lugar, no hay forma de multar a la gente en sus propias casas. O sea, es una penalidad civil, pero yo no puedo entrar a nivel legal a la casa de nadie y multarlo. Entonces, esto es conciencia social y salud pública. Y es el mensaje tiene que seguir muy claro. Si hay algo que hemos aprendido entre febrero y ahora es cómo se transmite el virus, cómo podemos actuar cada uno de nosotros para prevenir que esto vuelva a ser una crisis y no vernos como nos vimos ni en abril, todos encerrados en casa, ni en julio, con los hospitales abarrotados y una comunidad donde todo el mundo se está infectando y cada día te enterabas de alguien nuevo que estaba infectado. Entonces, primero que nada, si están haciendo reuniones en casa, seguirlas limitando, no más de 10 personas o el menor número de personas posible. Este no es el momento de hacer una fiesta con 100 personas en su casa. No es el momento. En segundo lugar, si se van a reunir, sobre todo, protejan a las personas vulnerables. Es muy importante, las personas mayores, las personas inmunosuprimidas. Hay que seguirlas cuidando como si fueran de cristal, ¿ok? Muchísimo cuidado, seguir usando la máscara y la distancia social. Obviamente, si uno está sentado en una mesa, se tiene que quitar la máscara para comer, pero si después van a conversar, vuélvanse a poner la máscara y síganse cuidando. La higiene, lavar las manos, eso ya lo hemos dicho muchas veces. Entonces, creo que es importante el mensaje de la comunidad que queremos, estamos mejorando, vamos en buen camino, pero recuerden que en abril y mayo, cuando reabrimos, fuimos muy rápido en subida y no queremos tener eso nuevamente. Vamos a aprender de nuestros errores y vamos a hacer las cosas bien. Y contamos con cada uno de ustedes.
Muchas gracias, doctora.
Thank you to both doctors. And I don't know if Dr. Abu, if you want to say that in English as well about the parties with 100 people at homes. I am getting a few questions via email and text message from reporters and also from constituents, residents of Miami-Dade County and business owners asking when are venues going to be okay, and banquet halls and social gathering, mass social gathering type of places.
I think I already answered that before. We discussed that this morning and felt that it's better for us to get more data before we move forward with those kind of the indoor venues, the banquet halls, et cetera, movie theaters, because they are indoors. They're a lot more, they're riskier. And so we need to get better data on it and make sure that whatever rules that we have in place are adequate for the protection of the patrons that will go to the banquet halls and to the movie theaters. Right now, we need a couple more weeks to look at what's happening with the virus, what's happening with Labor Day, what happened with opening the restaurants as we move forward. So we're going to do it in a cautious way.
Thank you, Mayor. We have Carlos Suarez from NBC6 with the next hand raised for the next question.
Thank you, Patty. Thank you, Mayor, and everyone else. I have a quick question on WIOD. Mayor, you said on bars and nightclubs and face masks that they would remain closed and the mask mandate would stay in place until probably a vaccine. And I'm curious if you can elaborate on that comment, and then two, how did you get to that? I mean, it's conceivable that we might not have a vaccine within a year, and so I'm just trying to get a better sense of how you arrived to that conclusion.
Well, because bars and nightclubs, the activities there are not conducive to maintaining a 6-foot separation. And when you're at a bar, you're going to have to take off your mask to drink. And again, it's not at a bar, you're not going to maintain a 6-foot separation. And a nightclub, definitely not maintaining 6-foot separation. So those venues are really difficult. And so I can't foresee, what I said, I don't foresee us opening bars and nightclubs here for the foreseeable future, and until we get a vaccine. And because I just think that that's a highly dangerous activity, especially when you have the music and all that, and you're basically talking, yelling at each other to try to hear over it. Even though we have an ordinance which says you're not supposed to play music, even outdoors, louder than a normal conversation, right? So you don't have to yell and scream at each other. That's just a very that bars and nightclubs would be very, very difficult. And where did I get that? I got that from talking to my medical advisors and just common sense. It's just a very, very difficult thing to control and rather unsafe. So and wearing a mask, we'll be wearing masks until we have a vaccine. I'll tell you that. I'm pretty sure of that too. Okay, because if not, we're just going to get another wave here. And so the mask is the normal until there's a vaccine. And then when we have sufficient number of people already vaccinated, then we can go back to normal. All right. Right now, the mask is part of normal until we get a vaccine. Doctors, please chime in if you can.
Yeah, I'll just say very quickly that it's not just speculation. There's good data from other countries in particular and other settings where bars and discos and so forth have been sites of major clusters for COVID-19. So those are high-risk areas. The mayor's absolutely right. And he's absolutely right that the mask is unfortunately or fortunately, having to like wearing them, our new normal until such time as we have a good, safe, effective vaccine.
Thank you, Dr. Marty. And Mr. Mayor, some of the Spanish language reporters are asking if you could repeat the part about the bars and nightclubs in Spanish.
Como no, yo pienso que las barras y también las discotecas, etcétera, no se pueden abrir hasta que tenemos una vacuna que es efectiva, porque esas actividades son demasiado peligrosas. Son actividades que están cuando tú lo haces, estás adentro, estás mucho más cerca, te tienes que quitar la máscara, etcétera. Así que esos negocios, es lamentable, que yo no lo deseo, pero esos negocios yo no veo que se pueden abrir hasta que tenemos una vacuna. Y también el uso de las máscaras van a estar con nosotros hasta que otra vez tenemos una vacuna en el futuro. Vamos a rezar para que esto suceda lo más rápido posible, que tengamos una vacuna efectiva en los próximos meses, pero también tenemos que esperar hasta después que ya la tienen, entonces se tiene que vacunar los residentes, así que tenemos que esperar hasta que suficientes números de residentes tengan la vacuna y está aprobado que es efectiva. Entonces podemos regresar a lo que es lo normal, sin máscaras, etcétera, y abrir todos los lugares de negocio, pero hasta ese tiempo tenemos que mantener las máscaras y algunos negocios que es lamentable que se tienen que estar cerrados hasta que tengamos la vacuna.
And I'd like, if I could, that there are some documented reinfections. So even if you are someone who's recovered from COVID-19, you should not view that as a license not to use a mask or not to have that distance. You should still act like you are at risk and a risk to others.
Thank you, Dr. Marty. Our next question is from Doug Hanks. Before I go out to him, though, remember, reporters, please raise your hands if you have questions. Los reporteros, si tienen preguntas, por favor, levanten la mano virtual aquí en Zoom. Doug, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Mayor, can you clarify what the rules would be for scooters? It'd be like under previous operating rules, except they have to have sanitizing wipes, or did you say something about docking?
Well, I'm not sure about the docking station, so I mean, we hope that they'd have docking stations. I got to take a look at the rule. Okay, we got to that particular level of detail. So, Jen, do they have to be docked or not?
Yes, they'll either have to have a docking station or have some way that the sanitizing or disinfecting materials can be stored, some kind of storage cart or something on the particular vehicle.
So if they're not docked, then they have to have sanitizers on them so that the person can wipe it down prior to use and then wipe it down after use. I've also asked Jennifer to look and put in the order, I'm not sure she did, that all these micro mobility companies, they use an app. So we want to send a message on the app that says, please wipe the scooter or whatever prior to use, and then when they get off the scooter and they are, getting off of it, they also have to use the app again to say, I'm no longer running it. Again, that message comes up, please clean the, wipe down the scooter or the bicycle or whatever. So that's going to be part of the order.
Can I ask, has anyone asked the cost of this? And are you going to provide the same sanitizing supplies on transit vehicles that the county runs?
I believe that we do have sanitizing supplies on county vehicles, all right? And so the cost is, it's the cost of doing business.
Thank you, Mayor. We have a couple of follow-up questions. The first one from Andy Slater.
Mayor, I have a question about the restaurants, but before I get to that, I just want to follow up what Carlos asked. When you talked about the bars and the nightclubs until the vaccine, does that also include strip clubs?
That's something we're going to have to discuss with the medical advisors again about those clubs, all right? A bar, it's a little bit different, okay? So they operate differently. And Jennifer Moon actually knows a heck of a lot about them, okay? So because she's been bombarded by this question.
And then secondly, I know you made an exemption for sports fans going to games. As you know, the Miami Heat are going to the Eastern Conference Finals, and those games are going to start about 8:30. A lot of people normally like to go to restaurants, and the restaurants are having to shut down, which would basically be at halftime because of the curfew. Is there going to be any exemption for that moving forward?
No. I don't know when the Heat, I guess, when they start their finals, but the curfew extension starts at 11 on Monday. And so people can be at a restaurant or be there until 10:30 or so. But no, I'm not expecting to do that because then there's no ticket involved here. With something that you're actually going to, there's a ticketed event. You have something that proves that you were at this. Anybody can now say, "Well, I was watching the Heat at a restaurant." I don't see how they can be because the restaurant has to close by 11 o'clock.
I guess we'll get to the parade question in a few weeks.
I think you're, let's get to the parade when it's time to get to the parade.
You may see virtual parades for the first time. Christina Vasquez from Local 10 has another follow-up question. Christina.
Hey there, I'm back. Hopefully for a little bit longer than last time. The contact tracing app is, and maybe that's for Moon. I don't know if there's an update on where we are with the launch of that. And there was a conversation at one point too of having it sort of connected with maybe even Palm Beach County and Broward County to kind of have a regional look at that. And that's question one. And now I have a question too about strip clubs. Can you again bring some clarification about strip clubs not falling into bars and nightclubs? And I guess I don't really quite get the distinction between strip clubs and nightclubs and bars from a health perspective.
Well, nightclubs are something you do dancing and you're drinking and et cetera. I don't believe that that's what happens at a strip club, but I'm not an expert. Jen is an expert on it, though.
Thank you, Mayor. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Christina.
No, I'd love to hear from Moon about both the contact tracing app, where we are with that, and this distinction between strip clubs.
The contact tracing app was purchased, and we are waiting for the final approval for it to be. I guess Google has to approve for it to be allowed to be purchased by the public. And today, actually, I noticed that the updates to the iOS occurred that allow for the tracing to happen, even if you don't purchase the app, which I know was part of what they were waiting for as well, for those apps to be working. So that was pushed out. The updates were pushed out today. In terms of the differences, the rules that each of the adult entertainment venues develop specific rules that governed how they were operating, and they were required to have their customers seated at tables with social distancing and a certain distance from the entertainers. And that is not the same as the bars were not open, and that is not the same as what happens at a nightclub. So there were differences in the business processes that were occurring at those particular venues. But they are not allowed to reopen.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have now en español Jenny Padura de Noticias 23. Jenny.
Hola, ¿me escuchan?
Sí.
Hola, buenas tardes. Quería preguntarle a la doctora Martí y también al alcalde acerca de las nuevas cifras, los nuevos números de muertes aquí en el estado de la Florida. Hacía ya unas cuantas semanas, 3 semanas, que no veíamos estos números tan altos. Hoy se reportaron 200 nuevas muertes en el estado de la Florida, aquí en el condado 74. Quisiera saber qué lectura le da el alcalde a estas cifras y cómo ve este incremento en el número de muertes. Él y también la doctora, ¿qué me puede decir al respecto?
Ok, el número de eso es porque eso no sucedió hoy, ayer. Esos son casos que estaban, en inglés se llaman backlog. Así que ahora esas muertes entonces se tienen que dedicar al día que sucedió. Entonces le vamos a poner los números de cuando esa muerte sucedió. Así que no es 74 personas que se murieron ayer. Son casos que estaban debajo de investigación, que se determinaron que eso es COVID-19, pero son casos que tienen semanas, yo creo, de investigación. Así que no es algo que pasó ayer, y puede ser que es la misma cosa que sucedió con el estado de la Florida, yo no sé. Pero déjame preguntarle a Jennifer, ella te puede en inglés, así que te puedo responder mejor. Jennifer, the question was about the 74 cases that were reported yesterday, and my answer was that it really wasn't yesterday. This is a backlog of a number of weeks, probably, of cases that were just cataloged as being COVID-19. Now we'll go back and actually allocate it to the proper date in which the death occurred. Is that correct?
Yes, and you're going to see, you saw a change.
Si lo puede hacer en español, por favor.
Ella me lo está diciendo a mí, así que yo te lo puedo decir a ti.
Okay, no problem.
Okay.
You'll see, you saw a change in the dashboard this week as well, where we moved from using the data that was coming from our medical examiner. Since the medical examiner's responsibilities have changed in terms of COVID reporting, we switched over to getting the information from the Florida Department of Health. So you saw that switch, and now they are reporting some older cases and putting them into the dates that they are assigned to.
How far back does this 74 go?
I do not know. I can find out.
But it's, I said weeks. Is that off?
No, it's a while.
Dr. Marty?
We had this conversation with the Florida Department of Health today, specifically, and we know that it's going to feed over several days that were empty before. There's no doubt about it. And we just don't have exact data for which day they belong to. So it's
How far back does it go? You know?
Sorry?
How far back does it go? The 74.
They didn't answer. They mentioned that in July at the peak, the day that we had the most death was 61 deaths. And, so these 74 are definitely not in 1 day or 2 days, but we don't know if it's 1 week or 2 weeks. What we do know is that we're still having patients sick and people dying. So I think that's an important message for the community. This is not a mild disease, that it's all under control and it's just a cold. We still see people critically ill and we still have deaths, and we would like to get these deaths to zero for real. So that's what we're all aiming for. We're not here to try to keep business closed. We want the economy to go back. We want the kids going back to school, but we want everyone to understand that we're not there yet, and we need to stay on high alert and acting the way we're acting to prevent further spread and to prevent deaths, which is really, really important.
And Dr. Abbas, that right? And I just want to add that one of the reasons for the delay is that many people who are at certain stages of illness that are so sick that we know they can't recover are sent home. And so that makes the whole process of doing death certificates and getting the information harder. And that's one of the reasons we're seeing this.
Hay muchas razones porque los datos demoran. Como dijo la doctora, muchas personas que ya están demasiado enfermos y ya saben que no se van a recuperar, los mandan para la casa. Cuando eso sucede, entonces los datos se demoran y por eso tenemos días donde tú vas a tener 74, pero de verdad eso son 74 personas que murieron sobre varios días y no semanas. Y eso, el mensaje también es que todavía hay personas que se están falleciendo. Este es un virus que es muy peligroso. No podemos bajar nuestro guardia, aunque números de personas todavía están falleciendo de este virus todos los días. No vamos a estar contentos hasta que llegamos a cero.
Gracias, alcalde y doctora.
Thank you, doctors. Thank you, Mayor. And let us go now to Alejandro Isturiz with Telemundo 51. Con una pregunta en español. Hola, Alejandro.
Hola, Pati, muchas gracias a ti. Alcalde, buenas tardes. Gracias también por esta oportunidad. Quiero preguntarle algo que no tiene que ver directamente, por supuesto, con el tema del COVID, sino que es con la posible nominación de Miami-Dade como potencial condado para instalar la sede de lo que será el Comando Espacial de los Estados Unidos en la base aérea de Homestead. Tener un poco su reacción a esto y cómo podría esto ayudar, colaborar a la economía del condado y de la comunidad de Homestead.
Bueno, ser el centro del Space Force es, si estuviera como el centro en el futuro, va a ser tan importante como el centro de la Fuerza Aérea o el Ejército o también la Fuerza Naval, porque ese es el futuro está en el espacio. Así que teniendo esto aquí nos da no solamente la oportunidad que vamos a tener más personas, más soldados, más técnicos aquí, localizados aquí en el condado de Miami-Dade, un impacto económico de millones y millones de dólares, pero también para el futuro. También puede establecer el condado de Miami-Dade como un centro de tecnología, alta tecnología, aquí. Y por eso que es tan importante, por eso que nosotros somos parte de este en inglés se llama competition, para ser el centro del Space Force, porque el Space Force es el futuro.
Son 8 lugares de competencia. Tiene el apoyo suyo, por supuesto, tiene el apoyo también del gobernador, pero ¿por qué Homestead podría estar en las primeras selecciones, en la primera línea de selección, teniendo en cuenta también los otros sitios importantes que tiene también el Estado y diferentes sectores del país, ¿no?
Bueno, porque tenemos el terreno, también tenemos la capacidad, tenemos ya ahí está establecido una base de la Fuerza Aérea ahí, y también tenemos el talento aquí en el condado de Miami-Dade y estamos creando más y más talento con todas las universidades en lo que es la alta tecnología, y por eso es que es algo que yo creo que es y también es cercano al Cape Kennedy, al Cabo Kennedy, por donde ahí van a lanzar muchos de sus missions por el Space Force. Así que por eso tenemos la ventaja. Pero hay otros lugares que también tienen ventaja. Así que vamos a ver en qué manera podemos hacer lo más posible para traer, si no el centro, partes de lo que es las operaciones del Space Force, que se lo localicen aquí en Miami-Dade.
Gracias, alcalde.
Gracias a usted.
Thank you, Mayor. And we have one more question, and it comes from WLRN's Veronica Zaragovia. Hi, Veronica.
Hi, Patty and Mayor Gimenez. Thank you for taking my question. I have a couple of quick questions. One is, it might be a little more for Dr. Abo, actually. A while back, I had reported to listeners what kind of people were occupying the most beds in the ICU unit at Jackson. I'm wondering if that's changed. It was younger. We were hearing about younger people with comorbidities coming in. I'm wondering if it's changed at this point in the pandemic. If you could describe a bit about who's falling seriously ill at this point.
Sure. Thank you for the question, Veronica. So we're seeing a mix. There's a group of patients that continue to be the elderly, highly, several comorbidities and at risk. But we also have a group of younger patients. We're still seeing people in their 40s and 50s critically ill, some of them with no risk factors, some of them with one or two risk factors. So it's not the classic person that has, 10 things, high blood pressure, diabetes, obesity, and lung disease, but we're seeing perhaps someone in their 50s with just obesity, or someone in their 40s and 50s with, no history of heart disease and things like that. So I still urge everyone to understand that we still cannot pinpoint why some people that are very healthy can fall in very, very sick, and why some people who you would think will fall in very sick are recovering very quickly. I would say that it's a mix, and we're still seeing people in their 40s and 50s as well as older.
Thank you so much. And just a question about testing that I don't know, the lab, I don't know if this is something that any of you could answer, Mayor Gimenez. If Quest is no longer being used, who's taking a bulk of the testing that would have gone to Quest?
Well, I don't think we contracted with Miami-Dade did not contract with Quest. I think the state did. My deputy mayor, Maurice Kemp, is in charge of testing in Miami-Dade County. Who picked up the slack for the state on Quest?
Mr. Mayor, you're correct. We do not have a contract with Quest, and I'm not sure who the state gave that business to, but I can find out.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I didn't know if it had anything to do with the county, but was curious. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, and that's going to do it. Thank you to the doctors for joining us, and Deputy Mayor Jennifer Moon for answering so many questions for us. Mr. Mayor, any last parting words?
No, thank you. Thank you to the doctors. They're great, and really thank you for all the advice you give us to keep us safe here in Miami-Dade County. Again, to the members of the press, please continue to press home the issue that we need to keep our mask on, we need to have social distancing, and the wearing of masks indoors and out is the most vital thing that we can do to protect ourselves. It's our personal responsibility. We need to drive this contagion level down as much as we can, because there is an expected resurgence, another wave that's expected in the fall. And the lower that we drive this number now, the least impactful that wave will be in the fall. So please don't get your guard down. Just because we're opening up businesses doesn't mean this is over. It's not over by a long shot. And this message really has to be honed into young people, to not to gather, not to have parties, etc. That's how we started back in July. We don't want to have a repetition. And the signs so far have been good. We saw what's happening Labor Day. We, the images that we saw were fine. A couple of people were not wearing masks, but by and large, the majority of our community was acting responsibly. That's all we need to do. Wear a mask. Wear a mask. It's not a big deal. Okay, we can get back to as normal a life as possible.
And the flu shots are available already. I please encourage the community to get the flu shot. We're starting influenza season, and really important to protect everyone. So thank you, Mayor, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And with that, we turn it over now to Lionel Lerabor with the mayor's message in Haitian Creole. Lionel.
The Bonjour, ici département de communication, compte Miami-Dade, nous parlons pour déclaration de Carlos Gimenez soit fait dans la conférence pour la presse l'IA. Bonjour tout le monde, nous continuons à observer une baisse dans le niveau COVID-19 là et hospitalisation a baissé. C'est une bonne nouvelle. Et après les bordéas qui finissent passer, nous sommes capables de dire tout que capable de gagner une augmentation qui fait dans cas qui fait dans COVID-19. Cependant, nous encourageons tout le monde qui a rencontré parents avec des amis pendant le week-end qui sont passés pour aller faire test. Allez dans miami-dade.gov/coronavirus pour nous capables d'avoir une liste côté pour nous faire test gratis chez nous. Il est important pour nous qu'un niveau infection en bas pour nous capables de continuer à gagner l'économie qui l'ouvrir et que nous sommes capables de retourner à travail. Nous avons une mise à jour sur la prochaine étape que nous allons passer après nous finir parler avec CDC et autres experts médicaux. Nous allons augmenter, déplacer qu'on y a, couvre-feu qui va commencer à 11h à partir de lundi 14 septembre et nous allons faire tout que l'activité qui a fait dehors est capable de commencer, mais avec règles vraiment strictes pour observer. Mais qui ça va le passer? 10h à soir qu'on y a, couvre-feu a toujours qu'un et pendant toute semaine ça, et nous allons faire exception seulement pour demain, pour les gens qui peuvent aller dans l'activité sport ou bien activité jeux, collège, professionnel, pour être capable de sortir bien tard, mais pour être capable de montrer le ticket que vous avez dans la main pour ne pas prendre une violation pour couvre-feu. À partir de lundi, nous pourrons permettre tout que l'activité à soir commence, mais avec l'activité dehors commence, mais avec le règlement qui est assez strict que vous devez observer. Par exemple, Zoom Miami peut l'ouvrir avec espace Cancun, Jungle Island qui peut l'ouvrir tout. Là, ça, on a obligé toujours songer pour porter masque, respecter la distance sociale. Encore, tout côté qui c'est playground, il va rester fermé. Dans le parc Miami, il peut aller l'ouvrir jusqu'à 10h à soir pour activité sport, bien lumière pour activité ça capable de faire. Baseball, avec softball, nous faire en sorte que les règles capables de strictement observer, nous devons gagner quand même un bagage pour couvrir le visage pour les gens qui n'ont pas attrapé balle. Pour côté qui a loué bicyclette avec moyens pour les gens déplacer, faire attention pour compagnie, ça a toujours songé pour gagner une station pour mettre bicyclette et gagner des désinfectants pour être capable de désinfecter avant et après service. Et côté qui a bateau, qui peut déplacer mon tour, faire en sorte que pour bateau, ça a toujours songé pour gagner 50% capacité. Nous voulons dire tout que l'activité limitée ça a fait commencer à partir de lundi qui a venir et tout le monde doit faire attention pour ne pas participer dans l'étang avec propager le virus là. Nous ne sommes pas capables de baisser les bras parce que nous continuons à faire tout ça, nous sommes capables pour nous renforcer, pour nous faire appliquer le règlement. Mais un monde qui ne respecte les règles et qui ne porte pas masque, il y a occasion pour prendre une contravention pour $100. C'est un business qui tombe en bas de contravention, ça, c'est pas $500 et même il y a un risque pour fermer le business là. Moi, je voulais mentionner tout que nous continuons avec le programme pour nous capables d'aider les gens avec l'organisation qui te recevoir gros pataswell dans le COVID-19 là. Le dernier programme, c'est un programme fédéral côté ils sont capables de gagner un fonds qui est disponible pour les gens qui gagnent business ou bien qui n'ont pas ONG, pardon, et les gens ça l'argent peut servir plus pour payroll, pour dépenses qui fait dans l'interruption business ou bien dépenses qui fait dans COVID-19. La dernière date pour être capable de soumettre l'application, c'est 30 septembre. Vous pouvez aller dans miamifoundation.org et là, vous êtes capable d'appliquer. Merci en pile que nous avons fait partie de nous pour nous capables de sauver la vie du monde, songez pour tes masques et puis respecter la distance sociale. Merci.
Thank you very much, Lionel, and thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon. We'll see you next time.